Everyone, we're back for part 2 of our Reddit DApp tutorial. In this video, we're going to learn how to write a smart contract to keep track of our upvotes or downvotes of threads in our Solana smart contract. So a quick overview of the video topic, we're going to talk about upvoting threads, like I said. So a quick recap of everything. If you're not familiar with Reddit, this is a feed. A feed has a list of threads. And inside a thread you have content, and specifically in this video we're interested in upvoting or downvoting a thread and showing it to a user. Just like in the previous video, we're not going to actually talk about implementation of the smart contract or the front-end UI. We're just going to talk about how we might define accounts that's required for us to write the smart contract and some of the design decisions that we made. And as always, if you missed the past couple of videos, I made a playlist that you can follow along. So I'm not going to read this again. You can find my explanation in the previous video. So I'm just going to just skim through this, pause the video if you want to read it. All right, so let's get to the meat of the video. What are our requirements to do thread voting? And there's only two requirements that we have. One, see the total votes in a thread. And two, see if you, the user specifically, have voted for a thread. And so there are three options that we can explore. So in the previous video, we made a thread account that kept all the metadata for our account. We can just add a counter to the thread, and then that counter would just be our upvote and downvote. We're going to see the problem with that in option 2 specifically, because if we use option 1, we don't know which user specifically voted for it. And so we can rectify that by doing option 2, where we create a thread vote count for each user's vote. And so that will do that. And then of course we'll look at option 3, which combines the solution from option 1 and 2. All right, so option 1, we just add a counter for our thread account. From the previous video, we created this feed account. It's a PDA, it has this word feed, so everyone can look it up easily. And inside the feed account, it has a thread count to indicate how many existing threads exist in our feed. There is a hard limit at U64, but that's basically 2 to the power 64. So essentially, we're never going to run out of threads. Even if we spam creating a new thread every second, we're never going to reach our limit. Next up is we have a thread account. This is not anything new either. If you watched the previous video, this thread account contains all the metadata for our thread and includes things like our title and our content. Specifically, that's all it includes. So in this option, all we're going to do is we're going to add a new field to it called vote. It's a I64, which means that we can have a negative and positive number. And just like we've talked about before, once we look at our feed, we can use the count to generate a list of thread accounts. Or we can generate a list of threads that's associated with our feed. Conclusion for this solution is that it's great in the sense that we can actually see the total vote on the thread, but we don't know who is voting for it. There's also some other implementation problems, like technically I don't know if we have any problems with double counting. Like what happens if we send a transaction and then the network died somewhere and the vote never gets registered and we have to try again. So potentially a user might accidentally vote for a thread multiple times. There are some ways to resolve this by using idempotent values. We'll kind of touch upon it in the next solution, but it's not exactly relevant. But let's see. So solution 2, we create an individual account to represent a vote. And just like before, we have a feed. And a new thing we introduced is the thread vote account. And what it includes is it's a constant string called thread. We have a user ID, so this is the person that specifically voted for something. So that's a pub key. And then of course we have an ID that would represent the thread account, as you can see right here. And the content of the thread vote account itself is just what you voted for. That's a I8. Technically, if you want to be space efficient, we really only needed it to be like I1, just a 1 bit. It's your 0 or 1. Unfortunately, in Rust, I8 is the smallest we can get. So conclusion, it's good because it's good for user lookup, because now I can easily check to see did I upvote this specific thread by giving my pub key and then the ID of the thread itself. Now I will say one problem with using PDAs and accounts in general to store all this information is that you, the user, or I guess maybe some other kind of soul, but unlikely, it's probably gonna be just you, will have to pay rent to store this data on the Solana blockchain. So really, this is a case of, putting your money where your mouth is. So in conclusion, this is a good solution for user lookup. If I know the thread ID that I'm looking at and I know my user ID, so I can quickly look and see if I upvoted something. And technically, I guess if you really wanted to, you could technically see if someone else has upvoted for something. There are a couple of problems to this. The first one is, just with this solution by itself, we don't know the total votes that a specific thread is getting, because we need to look up a user ID, and the only feasible way of summing up all of this is look up every single user ID in existence for a specific thread, which is impossible. But we'll look at another solution to solve this. Anyways, so moving on, solution number 3, we just kind of combine both the solution to get the best of both worlds. So in this example, we want to be able to have a total feed count, and we want to be able to see if the user specifically has voted for this thread. So to do this, we can still have our feed account to get our list of threads. And inside the thread account, we can still have this counter that we increment or decrement. And then we can also still have the thread vote account that we mentioned earlier, so we can quickly look up and see if a user has voted for it. So really, it's as simple as just combining all three. So I did mention in option 1 how we might have the case of double voting, and we might solve this with something called item potency. Well, potentially. I don't actually know how the Solana backend, Solana nodes and stuff might work with network failures, but assuming that is the case, how might we actually resolve this? Well, one thing we can do is, instead of relying on a count like what we're doing right here, what we could do is, and it could get pretty expensive, if we could do something like we did in the previous video, where we have a list of counts that's associated with users that voted for this thread. And then once we have a user count, we can look up all the users, and then we can just sum up all the values together. And because every account is unique, we're not going to have any issues with double counting. But that was kind of advanced, and I didn't really feel like it was the end, and I didn't really want to spend all that time trying to get that to work. So I'm just going to make a simple increment decrement on an integer. All right, so as you can see, the only thing we really need to know to retrieve the thread accounts and the thread vote account is the thread ID, which we can get from looking at the feed. So like I already mentioned earlier, conclusion, it serves both case. I will say one problem with this is that it relies on multiple lookups, but that's something that needs to happen regardless. Probably not good for the blockchain in general, but if we were to build something like this, it's what we have to do. And so in conclusion, we're going to go with solution number 3 to be able to both have a counter of votes on a thread and to see if you have voted for that specific thread. And the reason for that is because it's really the only solution that meets our requirements. All right, so that's that. What's next? So in part 3, the next video, we're going to talk about how we can comment or reply to other comments on a thread. And then part 4, we're going to talk about how we can upvote or downvote comments and replies. So until then, I will see you in part 3. Bye.